Today's review is of A Thousand Pieces of Gold by Adeline Yen Ma. It was suggested by @InColdBooks and selected at random from comments on my January 9th post. If you want your suggestion to be considered in future reviews, please go back and post on that January 9th post. A Thousand Pieces of Gold is a cultural history of China as told through its proverbs, with some personal memoirs sprinkled in. The author has previously written a memoir called Falling Leaves, which comes from the proverb, falling leaves seek out their roots, meaning that as things age, they normally seek out their roots, either literally or figuratively. Each chapter in the book is about a specific proverb. Loss of one hair from 9 oxen, little sparrows with dreams of swans. When the map is unrolled, the dagger is revealed. Yen Ma introduces each of these proverbs by including her own translation and interpretation from the Shiji, which is also known as the Records of the Grand Historian, the epic history of China finished around 90 BCE. Those pieces from the history illustrate where the proverb began. The author frames that history and the proverb with its relevance to her life. So while each historic episode tells its own and often very violent story, there's only a weak line of narrative running through from chapter to chapter. And as a result, it's a book that's really easy to put down and pick back up again because every chapter seems self-contained and there's no real requirement of chronology running through it. The title, A Thousand Pieces of Gold, comes from the proverb that words are worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Words are valuable and they should be treated as such, whether that's a compliment or an insult or a promise or a lie. Knowledge and information is worth a fortune. By extension, the book is about the effects of words and writing on Yen Ma's life. From her grandfather teaching her how to practice her Chinese characters by rewriting ancient proverbs, to her escaping communist China after winning an English language writing contest, to studying medicine in England and becoming a doctor in the United States. As an adult, she wrote a memoir that completely alienated her family and was disinheritance from her father because she became a victim of her sister and her stepmother's lies. But all of those things I just mentioned are tiny little episodes in the book, no more than a few paragraphs. So in a book of 350 pages or so, really only 20 pages of those are about her life. The act of writing the book itself is what exemplifies Yen Ma's desire to return to her Chinese roots. The language and proverbs that she translates and explains function as mile markers in her life. The book includes a map and an index of proverbs and a pronunciation guide, which are all very helpful and necessary to get through this book. In what feels like an excuse for not going into more detail, the author says things like, as I mentioned in Falling Leaves. So I presume that book goes into more detail about her life and tries to build more connection with her readers. But I don't feel invested in her journey in this book. It does make me want to pick up her memoir, however. So I'm going to look up Falling Leaves and see if that interests me. It isn't until the end of A Thousand Pieces of Gold that Yen Ma is clear about what she learned from writing her second book. That by measuring her life in Chinese proverbs, she discovers herself to be more Chinese than she had ever imagined herself to be after living in the United States for so many years. But I think she waits too long to explain that epiphany to the reader. While she tells us the risk that she had to take to tell her story, both in the first book and in this book, I never actually feel the risk in this book. And that makes the reading feel a little empty. I don't feel connected to her or to the ancient language that she really wants to convey to the reader. I feel more like a voyeur on her journey than a participant. So unless you are comfortable reading 300 pages of ancient Chinese history, this book probably isn't for you. A Thousand Pieces of Gold is written in clear, clean, concise language, but I found it too expository and sterile for my tastes. It's a book that's going to appeal more to a niche history reader or somebody who's more comfortable reading utilitarian nonfiction prose. I know there are plenty of nonfiction readers out there, and I suggest you try it. I neither liked nor disliked this book, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.